Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and children of all ages of YouTube. This is the Legacy Guard coming at you with a late night stream for a review of Godzilla King of the Monsters. This is Draco Argentum here, along with
Taurus Crimson, and we are going to talk about some massive kaiju mashups. I'm super excited to talk about this finally. I'm glad you've seen it. I am joined here by Orglord. And what an intro that was.
the always voluminous speaking Porg Lord, and we have a fourth member here tonight on the Legacy Guard. We shall call this individual the Lady Silence. Lady Silence, and that was Lady Silence. So tonight, gentlemen, the Godzilla King of the Monsters. Before we begin getting into the actual movie, while we are waiting for maybe someone to join the stream, what is
Hopefully.
maybe
Hopefully.
who knows? What's your experience with Godzilla, with the franchise, and what were you looking forward to going into the movies? Taurus, would you please begin?
Yeah, I'll start this out, man. My grandmother was a herpetologist. She was a reptile doctor, and Godzilla was her hero. If she could have left my grandfather for Godzilla, she would have done so. And I was the benefactor of this fascination with Godzilla because she would tape them on television, on whatever network they were airing on, and give me the VHS tapes, and I would watch them just over and over and over. There wasn't a lot of merchandise back then, so you kind of had to get aftermarket stuff. So I wasn't able to get a lot of Godzilla toys until recently, but I started collecting all the movies on VHS back then as they came out, and then I've stocked up my collection with all the DVDs and Blu-rays as I've come out, and as an adult, I realized I had missed a couple in there. So I'm now pretty fluent on the lore from beginning to end, and so it's something that's been with me since probably back as far as I can remember. I mean, even Star Wars and Godzilla both being very early memories. But to answer the other question, going into this movie, I've never been trustful of the American Godzilla franchise. I mean, we saw what the disaster Zilla movie, the Matthew Broderick movie was. And so I had no faith going into the 2014 movie. And after watching it, I was okay with what they did with it. It wasn't my Godzilla. It wasn't the Japanese Godzilla, but I bought into it. And so I was pretty excited to see for the first time a lot of these monsters that I'd only seen in either rubber suits or really bad CG before. So this was the first look at seeing some of these characters in full American CG splendor. And so that's really the only thing I cared about going into it, was whether or not the monsters looked badass fighting each other. Porg?
I mean, I was just kind of a casual fan, I guess. I mean, I've seen some of the older movies on TV here and there. I went and unfortunately saw the bad Matthew Broderick one as well. We went and saw the 2014 one, was pleasantly surprised with it. So with this one here, I know it looked like there was going to be a lot more monsters in it, so I was just hoping for some big monster fights.
Well, awesome. We'll let Lady Silence have a few moments to be silent.
Yeah, that's good. Draco, okay. What about you, my man?
All right. Well, I never saw any Godzilla movies as a child. Call me deprived, but I never saw any Godzilla. My first experience with Godzilla was Zilla, the Matthew Broderick, Dr. Nico Totopoulos.
Are you kidding me?
That was my first experience with Godzilla.
I never knew that. That's a little bit of trivia. That's depressing, my friend.
I didn't. I knew no better Godzilla. At that time, I thought, oh, Godzilla is about a giant iguana with French foreign legionnaires who pretend to be American, and that was about it. And so
Did you watch the animated series that accompanied that film by any chance?
No, no. Now, I had as a child seen a few of the older Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoons, which inevitably, no matter what problem they were having, oh my gosh, this whale hunter is hunting these whales. Let's call Godzilla. And they'd send out a signal, and Godzilla would rise from the waves and smash the whaling ships and then depart into the oceans, his mission complete. Those were my only experience with Godzilla up until 2014. And when I saw 2014 Godzilla, I was somewhat disappointed because I didn't get to see much of him. It was very much a movie about the human elements around the arrival and the problem of all of these kaiju. And but I can say that I was extremely satisfied at the end of that movie when you finally did see Godzilla belching radioactive fire down the gullet of one of the other monsters. And at that point, my bloodlust for kaijus had begun.
Well, hey, can I say something real fast about the Godzilla cartoon you mentioned?
Sure.
It ends with "and Godzuki" because he had the little sidekick, right? He was
Yeah.
on the ship. It was basically Peach Dragon. You had the blonde kid. Do you remember this, Lady Silence? You don't remember it? So I have them all on DVD.
Of course.
And I know the last season's not released. And when I say I have them on DVD, I mean not really. But it was basically this kid Pete, and his name was Pete, and he was on this ship with, I think it was his aunt, who was a scientist, and the captain. They were sleeping together, but he had this little green Godzilla-like creature with him that had wings and could fly, and he was kind of like the comic element. One episode he'd be 3 feet tall, one episode he'd be 15 feet tall, whatever fit the plot for that particular episode. But the main thing that I remember about that series is that you recall the button that calls up Godzilla you mentioned, Draco?
I do recall the button somewhat.
So there were some episodes where they would be in like a whirlpool, right? They're going down, ship's going down. They got no option. They call Godzilla on the button. Godzilla shows up. Let's call it a whirlpool storm, right? There's like 8 whirlpools out here. They're going down in one. They're going to die. They call Godzilla. He shows up out of the water, and the scale with Godzilla is also ridiculous. Sometimes he could like stand up next to the ship and be the same size. Sometimes he could pick it up in his hand, but he would save them from the situation, whatever they were in, and then set them down like 40 yards from the ship. And then he would just leave like his job was done. But then in many episodes, they would get in immediate and unsettled danger right after that. And somebody would say, call Godzilla back. And the captain would say, no, we've already bothered him enough today. We're going to have to get out of this on our own. It was like, why not just push the button? You've got something that's subservient to you. Just push it again. Don't worry about bothering him. He's not doing anything else.
It's like Spider-Man. You only get one an episode.
I think it was. You only get one bailout. I think the writers were told by the writing director, the Kurtzman, if you will, only one Godzilla bailout per episode, and the rest is on you. If you use it up in the first 5 minutes, you guys are on your own.
You got to figure it out yourself after that, Pete.
Yeah. I got the series, man. You're welcome to it.
You know what? Honestly, I'm somewhat interested, but I may pass on that. Mrs. Argentum is extremely interested in the Godzilla movies. So I was about to get into it. We didn't see the originals Godzilla movies or any of the originals until just very recently. So Mrs. Argentum and I, all we have seen so far is the original Gojira from 1955.
4.
55 for the American release, or was that 56?
Well, Well, if you're okay, if we're talking American release, yeah, it'd probably be 55. But the original Gojira was 1954, and then it was re-released with a major intercut of Raymond Burr, who was famous in America at the time, for Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which I believe was 55. You
Mm.
watched the American release, so yes, that would have been the 55 King of the Monsters.
And we have seen the first two parts of the Mothra trilogy. The I guess the second movie in which Mothra was depicted, along with the first movie in which you see King Ghidorah.
Yes, so that's technically a tetralogy. I think I talked to you about this later. Mothra, the original Mothra movie, is technically the first movie in that
I
series.
I see. So of course, so we've seen part 2 and 3 of that 4-part series of movies. Uh,
Yeah,
so we went into Godzilla, the King of the Monsters, with expectations of Godzilla 2014 that maybe we weren't going to see much. And ultimately, I was thinking that would probably be the worst thing you could have happen. I know a lot of the diehard Godzilla fans had been disappointed because there was too many people, too much people drama going on in the 2014 Godzilla, as opposed to the Godzilla of their youth, where it was a giant, a guy in a rubber suit smashing a town and then getting into a fist fight with other guys in rubber suits and other Muppets.
yeah. I think there's some truth in that.
But so that's what we were expecting. We were expecting pretty much another set of a overly dramatic, focusing on the individuals, on the families being affected by this gigantic world WCW WWE monster WrestleMania contest. Um, but we were pleasantly surprised in what we got. So Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I didn't take notes, so I'm just going to kind of try to wing this. At the very beginning of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, you kind of see a flashback of parts of Godzilla 2014, where Godzilla is fighting off the giant radioactive eating kaiju
Yeah, the
and
Mutos.
the Mutos, and you see, you witness a family that exists there, a family which has lost one of their own. This family being, of course, central to the plot of Godzilla King of the Monsters. Did we see much of this family in Godzilla 2014, or was this just a complete contrivance of this movie?
I think it was a contrivance. Well, you watched it with me last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Poor Lord and I watched it last weekend. I believe it was, yeah. And so that is kind of running through my head even more now because I watched that since I've watched King of the Monsters. But no, I don't remember there being any tie-in. I think that's a complete contrivance of KOTM.
All right. Well, this family, as you proceed in the movie, you discover that this family, they've lost a son. One of the two children was lost during the Godzilla's battle with the Mutos, and the family has developed an unrelenting passion towards the kaiju, whether it be the Mutos or Godzilla.
All I heard was your cat.
Let me go handle the cat. One moment.
No, while he's gone, I'll keep this going. King of the Monsters had a lot of hype going into it, and it really relied strongly on Ghidorah the three-headed monster, which was the would have been the fourth movie in the Godzilla franchise, in which you see Godzilla, Rodan, which was another Toho property. So kind of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe back in the day, Toho had their own monsters. So you had a Mothra movie, you had a Rodan movie, and you had a Godzilla movie. And then they put them all together into one movie, which was in the American version, Ghidorah the three-headed monster. Um, and that's where you see all of those monsters collide. And so that was kind of the spiritual successor to what they were trying to do with King of the Monsters. Even though the new reboot series, I'll call it, didn't do a Rodan movie or a Mothra movie. That's kind of what Toho was doing back then, was bringing all of those monsters into their kind of Avengers, if you will. And it worked really well. And they also realized when that happened that Godzilla was the most popular of their monsters. And if you notice, there's not a lot of Rodan movies out there. Mothra did actually get a trilogy of sorts, so she did get a couple other movies, but from then on, they put all their eggs in the Godzilla basket.
And I'm returned.
There we go. A little bit of trivia for you.
So we begin with this family. The family has split up. The mom has been developing a new device. We find out that the daughter is concerned for her mother's well-being. You sense some family drama, and immediately you are thrown into the fact that they are down. It seems like in central Mexico, at near the Aztec pyramids.
Sure.
And they are no, I'm sorry, that is me misspeaking. They were actually over in China at the base of a Chinese pyramid.
Right, because that's because they first find Mothra.
Yes, because they're at Mothra with the Mothra egg, and the Mothra egg is hatching. Now this is occurring before any of the other events. Does this tie into any kind of advanced prescience of what's going to happen? Is Mothra aware that Mothra is going to be needed in the upcoming battle before it even begins?
I don't know in this continuity. It was really ambiguous. And as you know, Draco and Porglord as well, continuity is one of those things that kind of depends on the franchise. Star Trek continuity for Star Trek fans, it's always been very tight. They've always kept a very tight ship, especially when Gene Roddenberry was alive to oversee things. That everything had to line up. You couldn't have any inconsistencies with the Godzilla movies. The continuity was very loose, and I think with Mothra, and I'm kind of rambling, and I apologize, but the original Mothra back in the original trilogy or tetralogy, whatever you want to call it, she was kind of omniscient. Like she knew things that were coming, like she had some kind of prescient abilities or visions or something.
Mothra, the sleeper has awoken.
Yeah, indeed. But I think they just kind of carried over some of that into this film and didn't really explain it a lot. And it's always been left ambiguous. And Godzilla fans, and I'm speaking for everyone, and that's not really fair, but for me anyway, I've always just taken it with a grain of salt that Mothra knew things that we didn't. She had some connection to whatever force is out there, where she knew things that were going to happen. And so I think they kind of took that same um, generality with the new Mothra as with the old. She just knows things we don't, and plot armor.
Well, you learn that the Mothra egg is hatching, and uh, this is interesting because there have been you learn in the very I'm sorry, I skipped the very beginning scenes that there has been a new organization that has cropped up to monitor the gigantic monsters, the kaiju, to monitor, to track them, and if necessary, to destroy them. That's the organization called Monarch. And the government is seeking to bring Monarch in under its control for government regulation and to be under government control. Now, I don't know, gentlemen, but and Lady Silence, but Monarch looks like it has a lot of money. Where um do we have any idea where this Monarch money came from or what?
From my end, I have no idea. It's never explained. It's one of those things. How do these government agencies get their money without their superior officers knowing about it? I don't know. That was one of the things that just didn't bother me as a Godzilla fan, and being a fan since '54. Well, not I wasn't alive then, but since the '54 series, I have seen a lot of shit in rubber suits, man. So, like, there is nothing you can do now aside from the Matthew Broderick movie which was a travesty. All you got to do, I don't care if the plot makes sense. I just want to see monsters fighting. And as a parent, when your kids are little, they want you to fast forward the people parts. Just get to the monsters fighting. So from my perspective, I don't care. I don't care where Monarch got its money from or why.
What about you,
Or
Porg?
I think it's just, I mean, they're an organization that's been around for a while, because they are mentioned in uh, Kong Skull Island. You see them there, so I'm assuming that they're making their money off of residuals from the technology that they're developing to monitor and kind of control these kaiju in their slumber states, I guess you could call it. But I don't think, yeah, they ever really specifically state where the money's coming from.
Well, we later see in the movie that Rodan is actually trapped within a volcano that sits right snug up against a rather significant town or city. You think maybe Monarch is maybe demanding some protection money? Hey buddy, we got a fire monster in the volcano here. It'd be a shame if he woke up and came and wrecked up your place.
there's no telling. You might have a 5 minute diatribe about that sometime.
I might have a 5 minute diatribe, but if I had a 5 minute diatribe about everything, I'd get nothing done. Anyhow,
Moving on.
moving on. So, you see, Doctor, is it Shirazawa? Forest?
Whoa! I don't think you can say that first of all, but no, I don't think its name is Sarazawa. Sarazawa is the doctor that invented the oxygen destroyer. In this movie, I think his name is something different. And unless I'm wrong, maybe I just took that for granted.
Well, I may have to just look this up.
Look
But
that up.
you find
Because
out.
we sound real stupid right now.
Can
Like
you
we
do
don't know
that?
what we're talking about. Speaking of Egan's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, um, I'm just hey, I'm trying to cover for you, man. We don't have anybody in chat, so it doesn't matter. We could edit this down into a super cut.
Ken Watanabe plays Dr. Ishiro Serizawa.
Okay, so he is Dr. Sarazawa. Never mind.
So, yeah, Dr. Serizawa is one of the leading spokespeople for Monarch, and he's present representing them to the government. But shit hits the fan, so to speak, when it turns out that our main, that our leading lady of the show, Dr. Emma Russell, she ends up involved with Mothra as it's hatching. They've developed a technology that allows humanity to interact with the kaiju, to communicate with them, to influence them, to calm them, or to rile them up. What do you guys think of the orca?
Borg.
I thought it was kind of a convenient plot device. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me that you'd just be able to flip a switch and send a signal out, and all of a sudden, you're just BFS with the kaiju. But it was like, that's what they got to do. That's what they got to do.
I'm going to say the same thing I'm going to say every time. If the people were on screen, I ignored it. The end.
So you just completely ignored any time there were any bipedal humanoids on the screen.
Yeah, man. In order to suspend my disbelief, the monsters come on screen. Like anything that's happened before then, I forget. I'm a sucker for big monsters on screen, man. And I honestly, I don't scrutinize the plots that uh, as much as I should in these movies. And I know Doomcock and Jeremy Griggs didn't like it for the story and all this stuff. But being a Godzilla fan from a young kid to now, the plot is just there to delay. It's like a cigarette, right? A cigarette is a delivery device for nicotine. Would you agree with that, Draco?
I think that that is a valid statement.
Okay. A kaiju movie or a Godzilla movie is a delivery device for giant monster fights. I don't care what the people are doing. I'm not even listening to the plot. And maybe that's shame on me, but having watched 34 now, maybe 35 Godzilla movies, you learn to tune out the humans and just kind of wait till the monsters start fighting. So, my belief is completely dependent on what the monsters do. And if that looks cool, then everything else is cool. So I'm not coming from a real objective place.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Well, we can go a little bit less deep and less in depth on these issues then moving forward, I suppose. Just as a summary, we have Mothra emerges from its egg and becomes enraged by the humans nearby. Uh, there's some speculation that maybe someone is doing something to enrage Mothra, but our doctor is able to field test the orca in a rather high intensity environment to develop what is referred to as the alpha frequency, which calms Mothra down. Immediately afterward, eco terrorists break down the door and kill everyone except for the doctor and her daughter, whom are then abducted? Question mark.
Yeah, all I could think of when I saw her on screen is she should be Leia.
She should be Leia.
Yeah.
He's talking about the daughter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's her name? The chick from Stranger Things.
The chick from Stranger Things. It's going to be Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, every time I saw her on screen, all I could see was Leia.
Really?
No, that was a meta joke. You got all these fans out there screaming. Are you aware of this thing, Draco?
Apparently not. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, just like the shipping with Raylo, there's a whole group of people out there who want to see Star Wars rebooted with Millie Bobby Brown playing Leia.
That is an interesting comment. That is very interesting. I had not heard of that. I can't say I would endorse that idea.
Nor would I. I've been perfectly satisfied with the little short Disney animated series that's been coming out.
Have you?
We're talking about Godzilla here.
What do you think? I'm trying to derail this conversation. I'm being sarcastic, man. I'm so inflamed by those. That's a whole nother conversation.
I don't want to get into a 3-hour conversation about a sophisticated pulley system which pulls fish up the side of a cliff.
Okay. Why? Because we've already done it.
We've already walked that path. We do not need to walk that path again.
Fair enough. Continue.
So the individuals from Monarch find out that Doctor has been captured along with the daughter. They go to the husband, who has been spending his time chilling out with Timberwolves. And he's been watching them chow down on what looks like may have been an elk or a moose. The monarchs, like assholes, come in a helicopter and scare off all the wolves and tell him, guess what? We lost your wife and daughter. Help us find them, please. So moving forward, you find out
that happened.
That happened. Moving forward, the Monarch individuals believe that the terrorists are moving towards Mothra. Mothra has left the confines of its original containment and has created a cocoon underneath a local river, a waterfall to be specific. So Monarch believes that the terrorists are heading there to try to take over Mothra as soon as Mothra has escaped. In reality, we learned that these terrorists have instead taken a helicopter with a very large fuel tank all the way down to Antarctica because they have a very different monster in mind. Now, In the very beginning, I had thought that the doctor's daughter and the doctor might have actually been hostages. But once they reach Antarctica, the doctor is very calm and very much seeming to be working along with the terrorists. What were your guys' thoughts at this moment? I won't ask you, Taurus, because I know you weren't watching because there were no monsters on screen. Porg?
Yeah, very much so. And you kind of get very quickly in that scene. You kind of understand that she's definitely a lot more friends with these guys than you're led to believe.
It seems like she's much more of a willing participant in what's going on.
Right.
She has definitely given them her consent to go along with this mission.
Correct.
And yeah, that was a joke. Moving on, we find out.
Well, was that a Stockholm syndrome situation there?
I don't know. Perhaps I don't know. Maybe perhaps the Charles Dance character, Alan Jonah, he may have recorded her giving consent for him to take her along with him on the helicopter. I don't know. But we are moving towards a informed consent state. So who knows? It might have been that way, or it may have been just, he abducted her and she became badly in love with him, Stockholming it. But
That's my head canon.
there you go. So they arrive in Antarctica and they end up killing most everyone who was there. And you find out that they are there for Monster Zero. Now, Taurus, I know you have been a fan of this series for a long time, and this was the first time in this movie you saw the monster that we come to know as Ghidorah. What were your thoughts?
I've seen Ghidorah in the Showa series, the Heisei series, the Millennium series, and he almost seemed to get worse. Man, it's like anything. He is probably, aside from Godzilla, the most popular kaiju of all time, and you have to get him right. And in the old rubber suit days, the production was low, so you forgave a lot of things. Well, this is America and this is Hollywood, and we've got the budget, the ridiculous budget to make it right. And the Japanese have not had that market. There's just not the people over there to sustain the high budget movies for Godzilla, even in Japan, where that is, its birthplace. So to that, I have to say, I was blown away. This is my Ghidorah. Like, this is the best looking Ghidorah I've ever seen. He was believable. He was fearsome. He was intimidating, and he actually gave Godzilla a match on screen, which in some of the movies we've had before, he's quickly dispatched, which is unfortunate. But he's a formidable foe, and I thought they did an amazing job with the movement of the neck uh, specifically. It was very serpentine, and I thought he was not. I mean, to use the word as it's rightfully should be used, I thought it was awesome. Poor Lord.
I thought it looked like a good monster. I hadn't really ever seen this kaiju in any of the other movies that I'd seen before, so I didn't really have any preconceived notions of what it should look like.
Well, can I ask you this, Poor Lord? Did you see any strings coming off of any necks?
No, I don't recall seeing any strings or a stick holding him up or toothpicks holding them together.
No, then that's a win.
All right. Well, here's something I noticed. Now, of course, uh, Ghidorah has 3 heads and 2 tails. He has wings, so he flies. He looks much bigger than Godzilla, though I imagine Godzilla may be more dense. I'm not certain on that regard. Ghidorah's 3 heads seem to maybe fight with each other from time to time.
It did look like that, which was a very nice touch, and I don't think I've seen that before. I need to watch GMK again, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, but I don't think we've seen that, and that's a very interesting take, and it is actually you see that in snake culture a lot, where especially young snakes, just like young birds, can fight over food. And I thought that was a really nice touch for reptiles. And of course, it's thought that reptiles and birds are closely related. So I thought that was a really nice touch for fans of reptiles.
Chickens, the last dinosaurs. Tasty. Anyhow,
Super cut.
super cuts. Anyhow, we're gonna go on. Uh, Something interesting I noticed regarding the Ghidorah and regarding Godzilla, because after the helicopter with Lady Doctor and the daughter arrive in Antarctica, we skip back to where the Monarch individuals have arrived at Castle Bravo, which is interesting because that is the name of one of the last American nuclear detonations that nuclear bombs that were tested out in the South Pacific. But this is code name for the Monarch base where they monitor Godzilla because they've tracked him to his regular hunting grounds. Here, they really do. Allow me to begin again. One of the biggest complaints that I have heard about the Zilla monster movie back in the 90s is that Godzilla was reduced down to a giant iguana, that he was just a big monster. He was not a radioactive horror. He was not the Earth's revenge for our misdeeds. He was just a giant iguana who was traveling across the planet to lay his eggs on Manhattan and then swarm over the rest of the world with giant self reproducing lizards.
Yeah, and you're referring specifically to the Broderick movie.
That is the Matthew Broderick movie. Yes.
Okay,
The
just for specification, we're gonna call that movie Zilla.
All right. So the one of the main complaints about Zilla is that in Zilla, Godzilla had been reduced to a mindless monster.
Yes, he
Uh,
was. She was.
it was. We can't you can't misgender a giant iguana that self
Well,
reproduced.
it was a transgender species, and I wanna we respect all
Lizard genders.
lizard genders. Yes, we do. Rainbow. That's all
Okay.
I'll say about that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
fly the rainbow flag in my home, Draco. I don't know about you.
I don't have any flags in my home. I have Game of Thrones posters, which I don't know why I still have them up.
And that's why you're a nerd.
That is why I'm a nerd. But in this movie, when they're observing Godzilla, they note that Godzilla is acting erratically. Godzilla is flashing the ridges, the spines on his back are lighting up in blue, and it's an aggression display. It's a territorial display. They're comparing Godzilla, they're comparing most of the monsters to animals behaving in a pack with a defined alpha. This is a repeating theme over the course of the movie. Do you forgive this action here, Taurus?
You know, it's one of those things that you have the conflict with, and this is, again, is a big difference between the American and the Japanese. And Shin Godzilla is a really good barometer for this because Shin Godzilla is in pretty recent memory, I would say. So the Americans got the rights in the 90s. They did Zilla, and I believe it was a proposed trilogy at the time. It obviously didn't make it that far. And once Toho's leased rights were up for the American audience, Toho got it back. And so they did the Millennium series. And then America got it back. They did 2014. And then I don't know exactly how the license rights reverted, but they did revert back to Japan for one movie, and it was Shin Godzilla. So they have put out a movie in Japan since 2014, and it was a complete reboot. The first time the Japanese have ever done a true reboot. Every other reboot they've done has been, I guess, what you'd call a soft reboot, where they still use the original as its foundation. Shin Godzilla did not do that. Not only did they not do that, but they went a step further and they made Godzilla not only a nuclear born creature, but they made him an abomination. He was sick to look at. He was, for the first time, I think Japan really captured the horror. He was a grotesque looking monster. Like you could see the muscles tearing through the skin. He just wasn't formed right. He was a nuclear disaster. And they got that. And that at the heart is the spirit of Godzilla. The American Godzilla wants to get away from the nuclear message. I mean, we bombed Hiroshima. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. If that's, we want to get away from that message. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, American Godzillas want to stay away from that. And they've done it in the Gareth Edwards Godzilla universe, 2014. And you know what? I consider them different canons. I consider it the American Godzilla, and because that's how they've always been, I accept it, and I'm okay with it because I know it's a different canon. This is American Godzilla versus what the Japanese Godzilla is, which was born of radioactive production and all that. So I don't have a problem with it because at least they're consistent. And again, at the end of the day, like I've said, none of that matters to me except for the monster fights. Forglord, you have any investment in that at all?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't really question it a whole lot. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, moving forward, we have the Monarch group move down to the Antarctic to try to prevent any shenanigans from happening. At that point, their belief is that the eco-terrorists are trying to get a sample of King Ghidorah's DNA to sell on the black market. They do not at this point suspect the true nature of the goals, which are to release all of the kaiju. And of course, they succeed in doing so with King Ghidorah at the Antarctic. Now, there's an encounter at one point. The father scientist interacts with the wife and the daughter, begs the daughter to come with him, and she refuses. She stays with mom. At that moment, I had thought that maybe the mom had, before they released Ghidorah, had sampled Ghidorah's biorhythm, which again seems to be a very convenient way of being able to read what the monsters want, what they're doing, and to track them.
Hey, can I confirm something with you real quick?
Go for it.
You said you didn't take notes.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Why do you ask?
You're recalling this scene by scene.
Yeah. Well, I saw it just yesterday.
No, still, that's most impressive.
Okay. Well, yes, I have no notes here. I'm working off of my memory.
It's a fantastic memory you have.
Well, thank you, sir. While working on, she had sampled King Ghidorah's biorhythms. Now, the biorhythms, they state in the show or in the movie, are their way of being able to tell how healthy the monsters are, to track them and to send messages back and forth to them. But at the same time, once she starts sampling Ghidorah's biorhythm, you see that her daughter had her hand pressed up against the ice, and you saw a heart rhythm at that same point. And I assumed, possibly, that she was sampling her daughter's biorhythm, and that later on, when the father arrives and says, "Come with me," that maybe mommy scientist was using her daughter's biorhythm against her to control her into staying with her, which I thought would have been kind of awesome, but did not end up happening. Ghidorah is released. Mother scientist detonates the explosive charges that begin the massive avalanche, and they flee the site.
Hey, one more thing I need to interject real quick.
Go for it.
If anyone's listening to this video, even if it's a week from now, spoiler alert.
I'm gonna have to add that to the to the title.
Even Lady Silence laughed at that. Yeah, put that in the title.
Spoilers. If you're looking for something without spoilers, turn away. Here there be monsters.
Go back in time.
go back an hour and a half when this started.
Was this an hour and a half ago? Anyhow,
Sorry, go ahead.
in the process of trying to escape the Antarctic facility, Mother Scientist uses the orca to piss off Ghidorah. I really have no better way of describing
No, that's accurate.
the explosives didn't wake him up. No, but our little bird squawker did. And Ghidorah comes out of the ground. I guess he's a little hungover after his nap. I don't. I hazard a guess as to how Ghidorah got sealed underneath the Antarctic ice, but we'll not go into that. He just was.
Well, did you see the Transformers movie?
Which Transformers movie?
The Alex Kurtzman Transformers.
Was that the last night?
No, that was the fifth one in the franchise. I'm talking about the first one. Megatron also got trapped under ice, so we may be looking at a crossover. So just keep that in mind. Transformers, Godzilla crossover. Let's breed everybody with everybody at this point because they're doing crossovers with the Transformers right now. Have you heard of this, Draco?
No. What are they trying to cross it over with?
They've crossed it over with another property, and this is embarrassing. I can't remember what it is. It's something like Godzilla. It's not, but they're basically. Well, they've crossed over Transformers and Star Wars.
No, I was not aware of that.
There's a whole toy line of Transformers that transform into Star Wars ships and whatnot. That's non-canon, but anyway,
okay. Well,
sorry.
if it's not,
I
canon,
shouldn't derail you, man. I apologize.
I was going to say I heard that there was talk of them doing a crossover between Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Hey, we just got a moderator on the channel. I finally found a mod. It's Lady Silent. She's looking that up for me now. Transformer crossover. I don't want your phone. I want to see something I don't want to see. Look up Transformers crossover. Okay, go ahead, Draco.
I was just saying I had not heard of a Transformers crossover with Star Wars. I had heard that there was some talk about a Batman crossover with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, that might be it, actually. The Transformers Ninja Turtles. Yeah, that's it. I'm pretty sure.
Batman Ninja Turtles.
Batman Ninja Turtles did happen. Transformers did something as well. But this is all just getting us off topic. Go ahead.
All right. So Ghidorah wakes up, and at this point, we see the scientist's father trying to escape from Ghidorah. And at this point, the daughter steps up and she takes the controls of the orca and changes them. And Ghidorah suddenly becomes very interested in their helicopter. Now, at this point, I halfway expected young daughter to kick the orca out of the helicopter, but she did not.
She subverted your expectations.
Every single time, Taurus. Every single time.
Yeah,
so,
she did.
They end up getting the orca set back to its proper frequency of somehow telling the orca to kill every other human except for them. And so the Ghidorah goes back after the other helicopter, which has been grounded, and they are almost dead before Godzilla arrives to save them, or at least to pick a fight with Ghidorah.
Yeah, and just real quick, our moderator found what I was talking about. It is a Transformers Ghostbusters crossover. How does that make you feel? Just 2 seconds.
Speechless?
Unhallowed?
Oh gosh, I have no
no words for that.
I
made up a word, apparently.
there's no words for that. No, I was about to say I ain't afraid of. No.
Yeah, sorry, but yeah.
Draco, just remember that thought when you're trying to drift off to sleep tonight.
Let me reiterate. No.
Go ahead.
So we have our first, we have our first on screen of this movie of a monster fight. We have Godzilla and we have Ghidorah, uh, duking it out in the Atlantic. Sorry, in Antarctica at the edge of a giant pit. Uh, Taurus, how did you feel?
Dude, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was epic. I know there's, and here's one thing that makes me very sad is that Doomcock did not like this movie, and I'd really like to talk to him about his Godzilla relationship. But it looked great. Well,
Mis-
I'm just, you know what I mean? Like, what's your background with Godzilla? Like, you didn't like this movie, so I
Mr.
mean, I grew
Doomcock,
up.
I'm here to talk to you today. Have you welcomed Godzilla into your heart?
Well, I grew up with rubber monsters fighting. You know what I'm saying? Like you could see the strings holding Mothra up. You could see the strings holding Ghidorah's neck up. So to get these monsters to fight in true CG for the first time, to me was epic and it blew me away. And I know there was some shaky cam in there. That's that's probably J.J. Abrams to blame with his Cloverleaf project, but there was some of that. But I don't see the complaints that everybody's seen about the shaky cam and it was hard to see the monsters. I thought there were some great wide shots of the monsters, and I thought the fight looked epic. Porg?
I thought it was a good fight too. I mean, my only problems were just the interactions with the humans. It's like, let's all just stand around and watch this. No, let's not get out of here because we were just running 2 seconds ago. But let's all stop and stare at the shiny monsters.
And yes, and that is the typical complaint to which I say, and if there's kids listening, put your hands over your ears. It's a fucking Godzilla movie. Nobody gives a shit about the human characters. Like, I mean, that's my point. I know people are trying to watch this objectively and making a good movie. And I know saying it's a Godzilla movie is no excuse to make a bad movie. I get that. But the monster scene that you're talking about right now and the other ones that we're going to talk about, I thought it looked cool. Yeah, Porg's right. It doesn't make sense. Why do humans just stand there and watch this shit go down? I don't know.
I can tell you. I can tell you right now.
Do tell.
Yeah, I can explain this for you right now. Taurus, Porg, allow me to ask, why do people watch trains collide?
If the train wreck's gonna hit me, I'm gonna move.
Not all people. So you have, in this case, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and
It's called selective adaptation, I think.
it may be that. It may be that.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. Yeah,
Part-
we're all proponents of that here
It's
on the Legacy Guard.
it's one step Darwin. It's the next step shock. Shock, not necessarily in that you've that what you're seeing is what's happening, but shock at the size of the creature you're dealing with. Shock at the speed at which it can move. We humans are conditioned that when something is extremely large, it moves slow. We are, we are shocked when we see how quickly a hippo can move in the water because it's not supposed to move that fast.
I'm sorry, but I don't know if I'm qualified to have this conversation. I've never seen hippos move in the water quickly.
You've never seen that?
No, apparently I'm going to be on YouTube all night now watching fast hippo videos. Thanks for that, Draco.
You are welcome. We are conditioned to where if we see an elephant, we're conditioned to the elephant moving slowly. If we see a rhino, we're conditioned to seeing the rhino move slowly. Rhinos move freaking fast. So do elephants. Buffalo move incredibly fast. We're conditioned to these buffalo. They stand taller than a human can stand. And we are conditioned to think that they move slowly because they can. And when we observe them, they do tend to move slowly. But a water buffalo is perhaps one of the most dangerous animals on the planet for human beings because of that fact. So if you see a 500-foot gigantic towering lizard, and that's the familiar one, fighting an even taller, three-headed, two-tailed, huge winged monster on the other side. And as quick as you run in any direction you run, you're not going to be out of their reach. What's the
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. I mean, from a realism perspective, it's just hard. I mean, when you're watching a movie in a comfortable theater eating popcorn, it's easy to say, "Get the hell out of there, bitches!"
like, don't stop and watch? Well, why not stop and watch? They've never seen this other thing before. They didn't
Right.
think
I
it
mean,
could
I get what
exist.
you're saying. Absolutely.
So I can see where it would make sense that some people would go, what am I looking at? And that would be the only thing going on in their head. So I digress. Godzilla shows up and fights off Ghidorah and manages to save them from being consumed by Ghidorah. Ghidorah takes flight, deciding that he has won enough for today, and has flies off. And we're gonna go ahead and pick the pace up just a little bit because going scene by scene, we're gonna be here till 6 a.m. and I'm not.
Yeah, let's just wrap her up and give our final thoughts if you want.
Sure. Let's go ahead. Just as a quick brief summary. Ghidorah flies up to the Mexican mountain to Mexican volcano and releases Rodan, or to release Rodan. Rodan is released, and the Monarch people lead him to Ghidorah so that they can fight. Ghidorah predictably wins that battle. You have Godzilla show up, and Godzilla tries to fight with Ghidorah, and you have Mothra hatches and shows up to try to help as well. Oh, I'm sorry, I speak a little early on that account. Anyhow, uh, it seems that nothing the humans are going to be able to do will work, and so we hear of a time-tested, long-honored weapon. The Oxygen Destroyer is being broken out to destroy both Godzilla and Ghidorah. What were your thoughts, Taurus, when the Oxygen Destroyer was mentioned?
Man, I went fanboy nuts. That to me, the complaints about the script are valid from an objective standpoint, and I accept them. From a fan service standpoint, bringing the Oxygen Destroyer up in an American movie was extremely satisfying, and I thought it was awesome. Lord.
I had never heard of it before, and just knowing how well our attempts to stop Godzilla in the past had worked, I figured it was going to fail miserably, and it kind of did.
Kinda. Um, the battle, the use of the weapon does damage both Godzilla and Ghidorah, but after Ghidorah is able to fly clear of the water, Godzilla, it appears, dies, and Ghidorah is left king of all the monsters. The remaining kaiju begin to wake up under Ghidorah's call, and it seems that they are acting globally off of his orders, and that the using the global bird chirp net as opposed to the internet. The only hope at that point being that Godzilla maybe was the only thing that stood against him, and he is now dead. We see Mothra emerges from its cocoon, and using Mothra to try to track Godzilla, they find Godzilla. They revive him with a nuclear warhead and supercharge him accidentally with that same nuclear warhead and send him out to battle Ghidorah, who happened to fly at that point to Fenway Field, I do believe it was. And that there in Boston, Massachusetts, is where where the ultimate tag team match of 2019 occurred. With one side, we have Ghidorah, giant outer space monster with 3 heads and 2 tails, along with his buddy, Rodan, another flying monster from the south, the Demon of Fire versus Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and his chosen queen, Mothra. And so we had the battle.
Yeah, pretty much.
We had the battle of the year go down at Fenway Park in Boston. They brought the roof down, literally, leaving only Godzilla and Ghidorah able to fight at the very end. We saw some Godzilla turn into a fiery, flaming monster with cracked skin. I don't understand how that happened. Mothra dies, and the energy from Mothra goes down and joins with Godzilla, and Godzilla becomes supercharged. He becomes Super Saiyan Godzilla. Taurus, do you have any kind of explanation?
Yeah, that's a reference to Meltdown Godzilla from Godzilla versus Destroya in the Heisei franchise. That's why me and what's our fourth uh, partner's name?
I don't think he has a name yet.
He don't have the name yet.
No.
Okay.
Unnamed.
Unnamed. Our unnamed hero. That's why him and I were fanboying out, because you get Meltdown Godzilla in this as well. So you get the Oxygen Destroyer, you get the Ghidorah, you get the Mothra, Rodan thing going on, and then you have Meltdown Godzilla, which was a really cool call out to fans of the series. So you had a call out to the original movie, and now you've got a call out to the last movie of the Heisei series. While I might say they were trying to pack a little much into this movie from a certain standpoint, at the end of the day, man, they hit the right notes, and I thought the Meltdown Godzilla was awesome. And again, call me a Godzilla apologist, but I love seeing it on screen. Porg, what do you think of it?
I thought it was a good fight scene. I'm with you, Draco. I didn't quite understand what was going on since I hadn't seen all the other movies. But I mean, it sure did look good on the screen. It was kind of convenient that Ghidorah was able to draw all of the power from the Boston electrical system in order to supercharge himself as well. But real world physics to imaginary situation. So,
Well, I mean, if Godzilla is able to breathe up a nuclear explosion to get to top off his battery, it makes sense that I guess King Ghidorah could do the same by devouring all the electrical production of the United States.
Well, Ghidorah was also an alien in the original Japanese Godzilla. Godzilla was created with the nuclear fallout, and Ghidorah was an alien who had an electric attack. He was an electric-based monster. So I think that was kind of another fan call out to have him be able to be charged by electricity.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So we have Godzilla. Godzilla, when he's in this fallout state, Godzilla, he doesn't use a breath weapon anymore. He just overloads his back spines and creates a EMP/nuclear blast. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's that's kind of, that's the way they wrote it. Sure, yeah, we'll say it. I mean, I can't deny that it happened. So yeah.
Fair
and
enough.
then when he goes into meltdown form, he just basically breathes hot lava down his Ghidra's throat, right? And then wears his hat as a puppet.
Well, with the fallout form, he manages to burn away most of Ghidorah's form, his wings, his body, his heads, and finally, after the final blast, all we see left is coming out of the smoke is one of Ghidorah's heads moving about, but the neck is stuck in Godzilla's mouth, and Godzilla burns fire through it, and then seems to have eaten the residual ash because he has electrical discharge coming out of the sides of his mouth.
Yeah, sure.
Anyhow, that appears to be the end of the movie.
Can I say something real quick?
I suppose. What's up?
Wow, I don't want to put you out there. So I was on vacation last week, the week before this last one. I went to a Walmart, and they had 2 racks of Godzilla toys. and they had some small ones of like smaller Ghidras and Godzillas, and then they had the actual giant Ghidra figure. It was under $20, and I had more than $20 on me at the time. And I looked at the figure and I was like, do I even want this in my room? It was painted gold, and it had very discernible points of articulation in the wing, at the armpits and in the middle of the wing. But other than that, the Geeter was just painted gold.
Yeah.
It had no detail on it. I walked away from it. I've seen it since then. I've seen it twice, and I'm just like, I'm not paying. I think it's $15. I think it's $14.95, maybe $19.95. Regardless, neither of those are a price I can't surmount if I want something bad enough. And this toy is so terrible that I don't even want it in my home. So just a just a word on the marketing and the toys that they put out, they're bad. And I think that's a whole nother discussion too, is that the toys that we're getting now from films are absolute shit.
Well, that bespeaks of a different problem altogether. We talk about issues with writing and fan service in certain movies. Uh, it feels like a lot of our culture, a lot of our movies, a lot of our films are moving towards just a consumer based culture where if it has a Godzilla, if it's got a Godzilla in it, people are going to go buy it. So who cares how well it's made? If there's a Marvel logo on a movie, no one really cares. It's going to be a Marvel movie, so it's going to have 100 million people, $100 million worth of ticket sales.
Yeah. Well, and you're getting into that thing that's happened with Star Wars too, to some degree, and Trek. There's been no merchandise really from Discovery. Merchandise isn't selling as well. Markets are fragmented with the streaming wars, and so less attention is being put into the toys and whatnot. And I think the properties are really suffering from it. A lot of the memories I have growing up are from having toys of He-Man and Transformers and Ninja Turtles and Godzilla and those kinds of things. And the memories I have from those properties are largely related to the toys and the action figures. And I don't think kids growing up today, and I'll even speak for my kids, like there's not good toys out there for the properties that they're into.
Are you saying that you're not going to pick up a Netflix She-Ra action figure for your kids there, Taurus?
You know what? I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it because I'm a completionist, and I'll make that decision after I see it. But I'm going in with pretty low expectations. But that is on my short, medium, long list.
I'm talking about the toys, not the show.
Well, I got to see the show before I decide on the toys. I don't know. If I love the show, I'm going to buy the toys
But you love Godzilla, and you need to buy the Godzilla toy.
because the toy was shit.
So to wrap up the Godzilla movie of the human story, Dr. Sarazawa did not survive. The mother doctor, did she survive? I don't think she did she?
No, I don't think she did either.
No. So we have the doctor, the father doctor, we have the daughter, we have the survivors of Monarch, and we have major American city in ruins. Um, Taurus, a question, since you are our resident expert on the movies. Has King Ghidorah ever been so thoroughly defeated and destroyed in the past?
Um, Let me say this with the asterisk that there are 35 movies, and so you have to watch them fairly regularly to stay connected to that franchise. But not that I can recall. No. Typically in the old Showa series, he would fly off. Godzilla would kick him, and he'd fly off, and Godzilla would dance. And that was the end of it. He did get some more thorough thrashings later on, but this has been the most definitive, gruesome Ghidra beatdown that's ever occurred in the franchise, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, he got his tail handed to him like those Mutos did in the 2014.
Yeah,
film.
yeah, he did. He basically got a final move thrown on him.
Do you expect to see any Ghidorah coming from any subsequent 24 any sub sequels to this 2014 timeline?
I don't see how. No, I don't. And the reason I don't is that if they're truly going to make this a monster verse, they got to start rotating some monsters in there. And I'm going to say this right now: they need to start working toward Gigan because they've already brought the sci-fi element into Godzilla with Monarch and their technology. And if they're really going to go down this road, they need to start rotating monsters in. You're going to have to do this movie like a monster of the week. You have to have a new villain every time. And if they do bring Ghidra back, what's going to happen is they're going to take his remains, and they've already done this before. They're going to take his remains and they're going to mechanize it, and it'll be Mecha King Ghidra. But I don't think you'll see Ghidra in the form we've seen him already again.
Well, in the first movie where you see Ghidorah, he emerges from a meteorite that was almost like an egg.
Yeah.
So, do you think it might be possible that during his time when he was at the volcanic mountain that Rodan had been sealed in, he might have laid an egg?
No, because I don't think he was an egg in the film you're referring, which is in the King Ghidorah film. I think he ended up just basically as he was flying through space, he ended up getting caught in debris and basically landed as an asteroid and came out of that asteroid. I don't think it was actually an egg. Um, he is an alien. He's an alien from we don't know where. We don't have any backstory on any of these kaiju really, other than Godzilla and maybe Anguirus and Mothra and Rodan. But there's 30 plus monsters aside from that we don't have backstories for.
So the field is wide open.
Yeah, and I think there's some really cool monsters out there. I'm going to say the name Gigan again. If you're not familiar with him, look him up. He's a giant cyborg uh, bird creature with scythe arms. I mean, you don't get any crazier than that. So I think they're going to work up toward that, and they're going to bring the sci-fi element in with alien invasion and all that. I think that's where they have to go because that's where Godzilla's gone in the past. If they went on to the past, they have to go to that, and they have to bring in more villains. So we're going to get a King Kong movie. Everybody wants to see that for some reason. King Kong versus Godzilla is the worst movie in the Godzilla franchise. Maybe they're trying to redeem that. I don't know. But where they go from there, you're going to have to start just bringing in kaiju like crazy. There's a bunch of great ones. I mean, there's probably 10 I could name you right now that are worthy of a 2014 franchise appearance. So they got plenty to work with. So there's no reason to repeat as
The
of right now.
the after credit scenes really did hint towards a follow-up movie located on Skull Island. There was a lot of the newspaper clippings that they posted or internet articles indicated that most of the monsters, while they were involved in somehow rebuilding the environment in their locales, many of them were migrating towards Skull Island.
Yeah. So you got two kings, right?
One of the articles I think says, "Who needs a king when you have a god?" So,
Mm,
actually, I think the article said, "What is a king to a god?"
right.
So, you mentioned earlier that you were not quite certain about how the rights were worked out because you had a Japanese release of Godzilla, then you had the American 2014 release, then you had Shin Godzilla, and now you have Godzilla King of the Monsters. I do believe I had read somewhere that Godzilla had worked out an agreement for the rights where they would alternate movies. So the next Godzilla movie that's due out, I do believe, is likely going to be from Japan again.
It may be because I know the Godzilla Kong movie is not even in pre-production, or if it is, it's in very early stages. So we may get a Shin Godzilla sequel. He was frozen at the end, so he's still very much alive and around. So it, you know, it's a weird place to be in because the American movies make so much more sense. You speak the language. You're not watching dubs or subs. You don't get the satire that they're doing in the Japanese movies. That Shin Godzilla was really praised for the satire of the Japanese government. Well, I don't live in Japan. I don't understand how their government works, so none of those jokes landed on me. Um, as a monster movie, well, I'm just saying, just cultural divide there. I wasn't a huge fan of Shin Godzilla, which is kind of going against what I'm saying about Godzilla King of the Monsters. So all I care about is the monster scenes, and they were great. So who cares with the human stuff? Well, with Shin Godzilla, I was bored out of my mind because the human stuff had no relation to me. I didn't understand it. Because it was all political. It was like they'd all be in a meeting room talking about something, and then they'd say, "Well, let's make this decision in the room next door." And then they'd all move, and it was all, it was this huge meta joke on the Japanese government, which I didn't get. So I have to say the human element has to play at least some part in it, but I think because I'm American, I overlook a lot of the flaws when it comes to the American movies. Well, with the exception of Zilla, but with the 2014 series anyway. So, as far as what you're saying, if there's going to be a new Shin Godzilla next, I have no clue. I don't know where the future's going with this franchise, but I would love to see where they go with it in Japan, and I would love to see where they go with it in America. It's one of those things where I enjoy, all incarnations of it. It's like a comic book. It's like the Ninja Turtles. I followed every incarnation since '87 when it came out. Same with Transformers, He-Man. There's different incarnations of comic books, and people love them all for different reasons. So I think you're going to have fans of both series, but I think the divide is going to become greater.
Well, all right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Taurus, did you have a scene for you that really just seemed to oh gosh,
Encapsulate
encapsulate
Godzilla.
what was your defining scene of this movie?
Ah, man, there were several great scenes, but really seeing Godzilla and Ghidorah fight for the first time on screen, truly well done. That first fight scene they had, I got goosebumps, man. It was awesome. That was my favorite, really iconic scene from that movie.
How about you, Porglord?
I think the scene that stuck out the most for me is just like when he lifts his head up and just lets loose with the beam out of his mouth. That just seemed to be very Godzilla to me.
Lady Silence, do you have any signature scene for this movie?
Right from the source.
Oh, that was Lady Silence. There you had it, people. Um, for me, uh, I don't know. I have to say that my signature scene from this would actually have to be the first scene where you see Monster Zero, also known as King Ghidorah, where you look up and you see the silhouette of King Ghidorah trapped in the Antarctic glacial ice. The mystery of that moment and the sheer scale of it is what really, for me, made spoke to what we were going to see in the rest of the movie.
Right on. Yeah, it was a good scene. So, Draco, what do you give this movie? What do you rank it?
Well, I'm rating Godzilla King of the Monsters at a solid 9.5 out of 10. I'd give it a full 10 out of 10, except she didn't kick that orca out the back of the helicopter.
Yeah, yeah.
That was my only problem with it. What about you,
Wow. So,
Porglord?
so high praise.
Extremely high praise.
So
Uh,
that's a straight up A.
that is a straight up A, and Mrs. Argentum is on board with that score. She is absolutely in love with the movie, and is looking forward to seeing more of the movies of the more of the older movies in the franchise.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and we're gonna make that happen. I'm gonna say for me, I'm gonna give it an A minus. I like to go on the old school grade scale, and the points I'm taking off are one, like you mentioned earlier, Godzilla is now more of a prehistoric monster versus the monstrosity of nuclear warfare. You don't have that whole thing, which is kind of his origin, and there was a lot of human drama that didn't make sense, and yeah, I kind of joke about how I don't care about it, but you do, because when you watch good Godzilla movies, when the story lines up, they are the best ones, they're the better ones. And so when you find yourself ignoring it, it's not good. And the story was just kind of all over the place, and the human interactions weren't great, and they weren't engrossing. There are Godzilla movies in every era of the franchise where when the monster fight's over, you are engaged in the human story. So it can be done and it's possible. So that's why I'm giving it an A minus. Poor Lord, what's your final verdict?
I'm gonna probably stick with you guys too. I'm giving an A. I definitely enjoyed it. Um, not have being as big of a fan of the franchise as you are. There were still several moments that I recognized from some of the movies I had seen. I liked how they called out the twins scientists with
Yep.
Monarch dealing with Mothra. I thought they did a fairly decent job with that. Would have liked to seen some more monster fights, but I mean, it is what it is.
That CG is expensive, man.
I know it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wow. High praise from the entire Legacy Guard team.
including Lady Silence.
Yeah,
That's
get her to
right.
shut up about it.
Yeah. You could see it in her eyes. It was an A plus plus.
Definitely,
Her
definitely.
eyes are very expressive, like the Mona Lisa. Could we do a deep fake of Lady Silence?
I suppose we could. We'd have to get a picture of her.
No. That's the one condition. You can't have a picture.
Well,
Like,
I
Can you
suppose.
do a deep fake of air?
Well, we could do a deep fake of her audio.
Ooh, we
I
do
mean,
have some.
we do have all that audio that we got tonight.
Right, we have a lot of silent audio.
Yeah.
If we
So
could deep fake that, then you can give all of our hordes of listeners a better idea of who she might be in real life.
that's right. That's right. Well, I will put every core of my computer to work trying to create this deep fake of Lady Silence's voice based off of what we recorded tonight, so that the audience can have that.
And in closing, thanks for turning me on to deep fakes, Draco, you dick.
So, have you been investigating those then?
Yeah,
can we wrap this video up before you guys start talking about that? we're we're like an hour and a half into this.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this meeting of the Legacy Guard. This has been the review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, released in 2019. Thank you for joining us, and please tune in next time. This has been Draco Argentum,
Taurus Crimson,
Horde Lord.
and Lady Silence.
Thank you all, and we hope to hear from you again soon. Have a great night.